What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another video here on Peg City Hockey. The first round is officially set. The Winnipeg Jets will be taking on the St. Louis Blues in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's going to be a doozy. In the regular season matchup this year, the Winnipeg Jets won 3 out of the 4 matchups against the Blues, but they were interesting games. The Blues beat the Jets 4-1 in one of those games. One of them went to a shootout. They were tight games. St. Louis has always played the Jets tight. They've been a good rivalry. It goes back to a couple of playoffs ago as well. When St. Louis won their Stanley Cup a few years back, they played the Winnipeg Jets in the first round and beat the Winnipeg Jets. So there's a redemption arc here for Winnipeg, and this series is we're here. We're finally here. We've been waiting all season for this redemption. This whole year has been redemption, improvement, and dominance. I feel like has been the big theme of this year. The Jets last year were so good in the regular season. They had their moments where they slipped, but everyone, a lot of people, I believed. I know a lot of people had their doubts, but I believed. And then to get eliminated like they did, it was tough. And, I think what Rick Bowness did for the culture of this team and the chemistry and what he built, the foundations of this club, he was a really important instrument to building this club's success. But him stepping away, I think, has been a good thing for this club overall. When you look at Scott Arniel getting the promotion from within, the Jets didn't go with an outside hire. They brought in, they kept Arniel and they promoted him. And I think when you look at what Arniel did, you look at the culture that was already established, what he was a part of already as an assistant under Bowness, and what he built. The Jets have flourished. Even when they've had injury, the depth has stepped up immensely and played fantastic. And, they've always found ways to work in chemistry. Even when I don't see it, the Jets find ways to win. And, you can't deny it at this point. President's Trophy winners, best in the West, and division champion banner this year. Absolutely incredible regular season. And the stats back it up. So going into the series, it's going to be, one of those a moment for Winnipeg where they have a lot going into this. Not only from last year, but now you also have this redemption arc against St. Louis. Because, when St. Louis beat the Jets in that, 2018 playoff run for when they won the Cup, that was the end of an era for Winnipeg. Brian Little played his last playoff series. That was Dustin Byfuglien's last playoff series. It was, that was a big moment for the Jets. And Tyler Myers, if I'm not mistaken, as well. Like, a lot of guys were gone after that. So, just a lot of guys. So, when you look at the success the Jets had this year, and you look at those numbers from where they were last year to this year as well, with that power play being first in the league, defense as well, it's an elite team all around when you really look at Winnipeg. And, when you look at St. Louis, I see a competitor. And, when I see a team that's going to fight the Jets for every minute of ice time that they are on for, like for every second of every game, the St. Louis is going to be, one of these teams in this that just hangs around. I think they have the skill to do it. I think that they have, the young element as well. They got these got younger guys on St. Louis with mixed in with the older vets. They have an elite goaltender in Jordan Bennington that's built for moments like the playoffs. So that's going to be a really, impactful thing for this. Like the goaltending matchup alone between Hellebuck and Bennington is going to be fantastic from that standpoint alone, I would imagine. So, going into this, when you look at both these teams, these are obviously the Jets an elite team, but St. Louis is a worthy opponent and a really good. Like honestly, I'm really happy that it's St. Louis. Like I was looking forward to Minnesota just because I want the rivalry, and I would love to just watch Ryan Hartman get his ass kicked for 5 games or 4 games hopefully. But at the same time, going into this, I'm glad it's St. Louis. I'm glad that the Jets have this redemption arc opportunity from that 2018 as well. Going into this, they have a bit of history with St. Louis. It goes even more onto this mentality of this club and getting over the hump that has beat them in years past. And I'm just really, I think this is a really good thing for the Jets. When you look at this club, you look at this team, the way they've played St. Louis as well this year. They've played St. Louis tight. They played everyone in the Central extremely tight this year, to be fair. But St. Louis is a team where the Jets really played good hockey against, and I think that at times, St. Louis, and they also more importantly battled back against St. Louis. Maybe they didn't dominate as much as they did against Dallas in some games, because they definitely dominated Dallas at times, but they definitely had their moments against the Blues where you could definitely tell that they had earned those wins. I'm not saying that they didn't earn the wins against Dallas, but they had to give that extra effort because they had to battle to really get those goals and find ways to win. And I think that's going to be the same mentality going into this. And when you look at the lines of this club, obviously I think that Overall, I think that the Jets have a deeper lineup, but then the big thing right now is injuries. Now, I haven't updated this board, but we're going to talk about it anyway because I have some new information, but I didn't get a chance to update this graphic, and I'm just going to roll with it, and we'll talk over it, so not that big of a deal. But when you look at these lines right now, and these aren't exact lines or anything, this is just me throwing up, players up there. Gabriel Vilardi is skating, so I fully expect Gabriel Vilardi to be back for Game 1, so that's big news for the Jets. But Nikolai Ehlers, Nikolai Ehlers, after colliding with that ref the other game, it looks like he is going to be week to week. Now, I don't know exactly what that means because it seems like come playoff time, guys just hop in the lineup injured regardless. It just happens every year. So do I expect Ehlers to be ready for Game 1? No, I honestly don't. But I think that maybe for Game 2, maybe even potentially for the end of the first round, I think I could see him getting into a lineup. I think later next week, for sure. Maybe the end of next week, potentially, that he'll be in a situation. So definitely for, like around, Game 4 or 5 type of situation like that of the first round. So I think that's going to be the big thing going forward there. Obviously, the third line is going to be split up a little bit. It's probably going to stay the same for the most part. I'd imagine they keep that line together, but then they might split it up as well. Iafallo also could stay up in that first line. He's had a lot of success up there. I just put Iafallo back because obviously Vilardi getting healthy, but because of Ehlers, they could put Vilardi down there on the second line and keep Iafallo on the first. And when the same thing goes over for the Blues, obviously Dylan Holloway being out is a big loss. But the big thing with Dylan Holloway is that I think that him like Ehlers, he might be back for the later part of the first round. It depends, obviously. I think the first round, this is going to get a series, is probably going to start on the Saturday. So by that math, I believe that what Game 4 would be, Friday, Saturday in that situation, like a Friday, Sunday situation for like 4 and 5. So he probably both of those guys could be back by then. Obviously, either way, St. Louis is playing pretty damn good hockey right now. So, these lines are pretty, I kind of like them. Like this looks like fun hockey. This looks like a fun matchup to me. Obviously, I think that the Jets are a better built team. They get the most chemistry, I think. I think they're also deeper, obviously, down the line with their depth. I think that's going to be the big thing that wins the series is the depth. I really do like the Jets. I think they're a much deeper team than St. Louis. But I think that's really the area of I think is going to win this series. Is going to be the Jets' depth stepping up because you're probably going to be without Ehlers for, I would imagine, for at worst the first round. So, going over to the defense side, obviously Sandberg is healthy. It's been announced already. Sandberg's going to be ready and good to go. So the defense will probably look exactly like this, I would imagine. Obviously, you could see Logan Stanley getting in there. I hope to God that they don't put Logan Stanley in, but I'm putting him out of my lineup, even though he probably will play. On the other side of things, though, I would imagine that this defense stays the same. I don't think Torrey Krug is going to be playing anytime soon, but he might be. I could be proven wrong. But either way, I think that this is going to be pretty accurate to what we're going to see come for defense for the defense playoff time, and I think that obviously the Jets, again, I think the Jets have this. I think that they're just a more established, more responsible decor that know how to play in front of their goaltender, and they play their system well, and they play it against every opponent consistently. They've done it all season long. That's been their identity, consistency, and responsibility, more importantly. And I think that definitely is going to be the mentality going forward into this playoff series and this entire playoffs, honestly, is keeping that identity from the regular season, but, dialing it up to an 11 for the playoffs and bringing that intensity. That's going to be the big thing for the Jets this year, is to maintain the identity, but, bring up that physicality and then arise to that moment, to what the challenge is. And obviously, the final matchup to look at for this is going to be, ironically, a rematch of the Four Nations tournament from the Four Nations final from earlier this year. That's going to be Connor Hellebuyck versus Jordan Binnington. Now, honestly, I think obviously Hellebuyck has this, but you can't take away from the Jordan Binnington aspect. Like, he is built for the playoffs. Like, he's built for the big moments. The playoffs are meant for Jordan Binnington. That's exactly his type of game. He's stepped up. He's proven in his whole career in the NHL that these big moment games are when he shines his best. He proved it even in that game against the U.S. So obviously that's going to be the big matchup. I think goaltending could be really, really fun. This could be a really fun goaltending duo, and I'm looking really forward to it. So my prediction for this whole series, looking at all the odds, knowing everything, I was a Jets fan, looking at St. Louis and knowing from the matchups from earlier this year and everything going into this, I think that the Jets are going to win this series. I'm going to say in 5 games, but I would not be surprised if it goes 6. I think St. Louis is going to, like I said, I think St. Louis is going to play them tight. I would not be surprised if Jordan Binnington steals a game or two for them. And I think that that's going to be the big element going into this round. I think that if Binnington get a game or two for St. Louis, that'll give them some life, and the Blues will, maybe be able to claw the Winnipeg Jets into a win or two. But at the same time, I think that the Jets could really find their way, and the Jets have something to prove. Like, the Jets are hungry for this. They are ready for this. So, it's hard to say, but I think that 5 games is what my gut says. But like I said, wouldn't be surprised if it goes to 6. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'm really curious what all your guys' thoughts are. We've been waiting for this moment all season long. I felt like for a while, I feel like since Christmas, the entire season's been it's just been, okay, we know we're good. We know we're good. We know that they're probably going to win these games for the regular season. Let's get to the playoffs, and here we are. It's finally come. The whiteout is back. I'm so damn excited. I'm going to be at the final game tonight as well against Anaheim. It's going to be great. I'm so excited to be back in Winnipeg for the playoffs. It's a great time, and it's just an awesome time to be a hockey fan. So thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe if you're new. Peace, love, and positivity as always. Go Jets, go, and I'll see you all in the next one very, very soon.
It'll all be over.